Inside Mount Tantiss, on the planet Wayland, in the Emperor's private storehouse hollowed out of a mountain, Grand Admiral Thrawn had found approximately 20,000 Spaarti cloning cylinders. Each one could produce a soldier in weeks. Combined with the 178 Dreadnaught-class heavy cruisers he'd pulled from a forgotten Republic fleet, he had the answer to the only question that actually matters in a post-Endor story. How does the Empire rebuild? That passage is from The Last Command, Timothy Zahn, 1993, and it's the structural answer Disney's entire post-Return of the Jedi universe has been reaching for, without finding. On May 1st, 1991, Bantam Spectra put Heir to the Empire on shelves. Star Wars had been functionally dormant for nearly 8 years. The last novel in the franchise, L. Neil Smith's Lando Calrissian and the Star Cave of Thon Boca, came out in November 1983, the same year Return of the Jedi closed theaters. Lucasfilm turned away pitches from Kenner and Dark Horse. The official fan club shut down in 1987. Bantam Spectra brought in Timothy Zahn, a Hugo Award winner. The first print run was 60,000 copies. It sold out in a week. By June 30th, 1991, Heir to the Empire was #1 on the New York Times fiction bestseller list. The entry reads, Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. Spectra/Bantam, $15. The survival of the Star Wars galaxy is menaced by new forces. The trilogy sold 15 million copies combined. Bantam published Star Wars novels continuously through 1999, dozens of them on the foundation Zahn built. Then Disney bought Lucasfilm in 2012, and the expanded universe was declared non-canonical. In a Rolling Stone interview, Kathleen Kennedy described the sequel trilogy's development. There's no source material. We don't have comic books. We don't have 800-page novels. We don't have anything other than passionate storytellers who get together and talk about what the next iteration might be. She said this while the Thrawn Trilogy, 15 million copies sold, still in print, was sitting on shelves. Thrawn is introduced in the opening pages of Heir to the Empire, sitting alone in a darkened room, studying alien artwork. Zahn built his entire tactical system around it. Thrawn studies a species' art to understand their psychology, and from their psychology, predicts how they fight. An Element fleet commander can't counter a Mark Sable maneuver because the Element mind, as read through their art, can't process tactical incoherence, a flanking formation that violates geometric logic. Thrawn defeats the task force with an inferior force, having identified the commander's species before the engagement started. That's Chapter 1, before he's formally introduced, and he's already won. The Katana fleet comes next. Before the Clone Wars, the Republic launched a task force of 200 Dreadnaught-class heavy cruisers. A hive virus drove their crews insane. The entire fleet jumped to hyperspace and was lost. Thrawn tracked down a smuggler named Captain Hoffner, who had stumbled across the fleet years earlier, got the coordinates, and raced the New Republic to the location, securing 178 of the 200 ships before New Republic forces could intervene. Each dreadnought requires roughly 2,000 crew. Thrawn had an answer for that, too. Spaarti cylinders running on accelerated schedules, with Ysalamiri, force-suppressing lizards from Merkur, neutralizing the force during the cloning process to prevent instability. The hardware problem and the manpower problem solved simultaneously in the same book. Then Ukiyo, one of the 5 major food-producing worlds for the New Republic. Thrawn needed to feed his growing clone army, and he needed the planet intact. He positioned cloaked Star Destroyers inside Ukiyo's shields and fired from below the perimeter, making it appear the attack was coming from the planet's own surface defenses. The planet's government, believing their own weapons were turning against them, surrendered with shields still up. Thrawn got the food production undamaged. Surrender terms: Imperial control of defense, no conscription, no political interference. The tax was grain. Pellaeon observes that Thrawn responds to the surrender with courtesy and no gloating, because a peaceful occupation costs fewer soldiers than a contested one. The terms are as precisely engineered as the attack that produced them. The audience has been noticing exactly this gap. On YouTube, channels prosecuting the post-Endor logistics problem have found comment sections full of readers citing Zahn's specific solutions by name. One comment on a video about Disney's fleet scale describes Thrawn capturing Ukiyo specifically undamaged to feed his clone army, the exact strategic logic from The Last Command, as an implicit rebuke to the sequel trilogy's hand-waving on the same question. On a separate video analyzing Disney's EU erasure, top comments describe the Disney version of Thrawn as an imposter, barely recognizable as Zahn's creation, and another says outright, "They should have just adapted the Thrawn Trilogy." These are readers who remember what tactical patience looks like on the page, and they've independently reached the same conclusion this prosecution is making. March 5th, 2018. Star Wars Rebels, Season 4, Episode 15. Family Reunion and Farewell. Thrawn's Star Destroyer is above Lothal, the Rebel cell is cornered, and Ezra Bridger uses the Force to summon Purrgil, hyperspace-capable creatures already established in the series, which wrap around the Chimera and drag it into hyperspace with Thrawn aboard. The argument for this is that Thrawn's documented blind spot is the Force, which he doesn't use. That argument has some validity. What it can't account for is that the Purrgil were already present in the tactical environment Thrawn was operating in, already visible, already part of the Lothal ecosystem. The version of Thrawn who reads species through their art would have read the Lothal ecosystem. In Ahsoka Season 1, Thrawn achieves his actual objective. He escapes Peridia while Ahsoka and Sabine are stranded. But the productions surrounding him consistently announce his threat rather than demonstrate it. He is referenced more than he is reckoned with, and the structural machinery Disney removed explains why. In the Zahn trilogy, Thrawn's plan contains two self-destruct mechanisms built in from Book 1. The first is Jeruus Sabaoth, a clone of a Jedi Master, genuinely insane, wielding the Force to coordinate thousands of clone soldiers simultaneously. Thrawn needs Sabaoth's power. Sabaoth is uncontrollable. By The Last Command, he's redirecting clone troops to serve his own obsessions, demanding Leia's unborn twins, fracturing the campaign from within. The second mechanism is the Noghri, Thrawn's personal bodyguards from a world called Hanogar, a planet the Empire had devastated and then falsely claimed to be rehabilitating, to hold the Noghri in permanent debt servitude. Leia Organa discovered the deception in Dark Force Rising. Word reached Rook. He waited. At the Battle of Bilbringi, the campaign's climax, 9 ABY, Pellaeon reads aloud a report from Wayland. The cloning facility is under attack, and Noghri are among the attackers. Rook drives his assassin's blade into Thrawn. Last words. But it was so artistically done. He recognizes the craft of the betrayal as it kills him. The Noghri used their patience, their stealth, their honor, the qualities that made them valuable, and turned them into the instrument of his end. Without him, the Imperial fleet has no tactics. Pellaeon orders the retreat. Disney's version has none of this architecture. No Sabaoth, no Honagar. In Rebels Season 4, Rook is killed by Garazeb Aurelios before the finale. He never reaches Thrawn's side at the climax. In Ahsoka, Thrawn's guard is a contingent of night troopers. The Noghri weren't decoration. Their loyalty, their deception, and Rook's revenge are the structural hinge the trilogy's ending turns on. Remove them, and the ending loses the mechanism that makes it earned. The sequel trilogy's central problem, visible in honest criticism of The Force Awakens through The Rise of Skywalker, is that nobody asked where anything came from. The First Order materializes with a full military and a planet-sized superweapon, with no origin explanation in the films. The Rise of Skywalker produces an entire fleet from Exegol, without addressing its construction, supply, or crewing. The novelization attempts an explanation involving business people smuggling components, visible only in supplementary material, which satisfied almost no one. Zahn answered all of those questions in 1991, 1992, and 1993. The Empire would never need forced conscription again. That line is from The Last Command, because 20,000 Spaarti cylinders on Wayland would fill the ranks. The Navy came from 178 dreadnoughts the Republic had forgotten existed, crewed within weeks by Spaarti clones. The villain's plan collapsed not because a hero fired the right shot, but because the plan's own tools turned against it simultaneously, at the climax, in two locations at once. A force-wielding madman at Mount Tantiss, and a Noghri assassin on the bridge of the Chimera. The sequel trilogy was groping for exactly this kind of architecture. Zahn had written the version that worked 30 years before anyone started building sets for The Force Awakens. The Mandalorian and Grogu opens in theaters May 22, 2026. Mount Tantiss was reintroduced in The Bad Batch. Pellaeon appeared in The Mandalorian Season 3. Thrawn is the central antagonist moving toward the theatrical release. Elements of what Zahn built are being reused, but without the connective tissue that gave those elements weight in the original. Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, The Last Command. Bantam Spectra, 1991, 1992, 1993. It's still in print under the Essential Legends collection, and it costs less than a month of Disney+. That's in the pinned comment. Subscribe for more stories like this. The clones came from somewhere. The fleet came from somewhere. The story already existed. Disney just couldn't read it.